If we could show you a really cool strategy to elicit and organize information such that you now have a strategy to communicate with people, to solve problems, solve disagreements, just overall communicate better, would that be useful to you? Stick around, because that's what Mike Mandel and I are going to explain in this video. It's all about chunking up and chunking down.
Wow. And what's that all about? Well, chunking up, it looks from a bunch of details and starts seeing what they have in common, how they can build into something more abstract or larger. And we'll get to that. And chunking down is the opposite. You have the big chunks, you break them into smaller chunks, and then down to the fine details. You have to be able to do both as a functioning human being.
All right. So in terms of using this to solve problems, to do, whether it be hostage negotiations, to business negotiations, to arguments with your spouse, or disagreements with your children, or anything, literally any conversation that you could be having where there is a disagreement, or you need to form a agreement or solve a problem, generally coming to agreement. So first of all, let's talk about eliciting information so that we can either chunk up or chunk down.
Okay, yeah.
However you want to deal with this.
So let's look at it this way. Chunking up goes from the specific to the general. It goes from the concrete to the abstract.
Okay.
So if you say something, you want to chunk up.
Weightlifting. If I say weightlifting,
so
for
I
example,
say, what is this an example of?
Exercise.
So we've chunked up to exercise. And what is it exactly, what is exercise an example of?
Health and wellness.
Health and wellness, yeah. And which is self-improvement, isn't
right.
it? So we've got self-improvement at the top.
That would be, yes.
That'd be the huge chunk.
Yes.
And you can go the other direction. So we say, let's say transportation is the big chunk. And this is a nominalization. It sounds...
Yeah. The funny thing is, when you chunk from the small to the big, we should arrive at the same destination.
That's
if I chunk
key.
from the big down, I could get anywhere.
Totally.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
So if we take something, a big chunk like transportation, we can say, what are examples of transportation? Railroads,
airplanes,
cars, airplanes. Yeah. So then when under any of these, you can get airplanes chunked down. Oh, Boeings,
you know, Boeing 747.
Yeah, all these different planes. And then you keep chunking down to, you know, helicopters, whatever.
Yeah.
So you're starting with the big concept and chunking down. Now, the way you chunk up is you ask yourself, what is this an example of? Right. So if we look at an airplane, what is it an example of? Well, it's an example of things that fly. It's an example of transportation. Yeah. And the way we chunk down to the small little pieces is we ask, what is an example of this?
What is an example of this? Right.
Now, chunking up is really good for negotiation. So husband and wife have arguments about the use of their time.
Yeah.
He wants to be able to
I'm
play
too
golf.
busy for this, but I'm too busy for that. And argument over who should do what task because you're both busy.
So what are these examples of?
Right.
You know, tasks, what they're doing.
Yeah, and time allotment. Time efficiency or
But
allocation.
if you chunk up high enough, you'll reach one chunk that you can both agree on as being important.
It's an example of achieving balance. Or
yes,
something
balance.
Like that.
And you say balance. What's balance? Oh, part of marriage, right?
Helping each other out.
Helping each other. So when you chunk up, you find a common ground you can agree on,
and that's
then
the key.
come down from
the
there.
Chunking up, you always chunk up at a point of disagreement. You chunk up until you're at the same level of chunk that's like, oh, we're both on the same page here. We are at the chunk called getting a fair deal, or whatever the case may be.
Whatever it happens to be. Right. Now, let's say if we chunk down, we start with a big chunk like exercise. Now, you can go down from there to what kind? Well, weightlifting.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so let's get finer distinctions here. What kind of weightlifting? Oh, deadlifts. And then, Romanian deadlifts, like another one going further down. And then 3 sets of 10 with 185 pounds. Now you're literally
very specific.
Really specific. So you have to determine, do you want specificity or do you want concept? And Chris will testify to this. I'm really good with big chunks and then chunking down to the fine details. When I get paralyzed is when I'm given a ton of details and have to climb up to the big chunk. For example, I used to have a phone pad on my desk when we had, you know, a landline in the office. And my wife would think she was helping me out, would take the stack of messages, spread them all over the desk. And I'd come in and go, whoa, everyone turns in a big chunk. I said, put them together, then it's one thing. Answer phone messages.
Phone calls. Yeah.
Phone calls is the chunk. And then the individual ones are in it. So that degree of abstraction, I'm great at starting there. So if you say, if I was going to go and do a keynote, my wife would say, okay, you're going to Montreal. What are you speaking on? I say, I'm just going to speak on communication and change. Well, what's the first thing you're going to say? What's the first sentence? I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm still at the big chunk.
Yeah.
I'll find all the smaller chunks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's like, get the concept first. And a huge example of starting with the big chunks is when I was a kid, it would drive me nuts when we'd try to play a board game like Stratego or Conflict or Monopoly or Careers or something.
If you roll a 3, then you have to move forward 3.
It was worse than that. The guy's saying, okay, you get to go in here, and if you go in here, you win this, and then you roll, and then you might go over here. And wait a minute.
What's the point of the
the
game?
object of the game? That's the big chunk. The object is to get all the money. Okay, now I'm understanding how everything leads to that. How do we start getting the money? What's going to prevent us?
And that can be a useful big chunk too when there's a lot of scattered information in a, let's say, a disagreement among many family members. That can happen too, right? Family dynamics. You got a sister here, you got a brother here, you got a mother, you got an uncle, and they all have these different fights going on and arguments. What is the outcome? What do we want to have happen?
Right.
If we can ask that kind of question, that can cause everybody to chunk up and agree, well, we want everyone to whatever.
Have a good vacation together.
Yeah, we all want to have a good vacation together. Okay, fantastic. So what are examples of that for each of you? And then you can solve problems, right?
That's it. Because if you chunk up high enough, you'll find something you can agree on.
Yeah, and similarly, I like how you brought up the idea of exercise. You could break that down into weightlifting, you break that down into deadlifting, and then you could break that down into, 3 sets of 10 with this amount of weight on it.
Sure.
Okay, so let's say...
Then the color of the weights.
You have a husband and wife, and they both... they argue over activities. Well, I want us to play squash together. No, I want us to play. I want us to go to spinning classes together. Well, I hate spinning. Oh, I hate squash. Okay, we agree. Exercise. Then we can chunk down and find what are exercises that we both enjoy.
Sure.
And then it doesn't mean that we have to do all our exercise together. We can do our own workouts, things that we like.
Right.
But if it comes to spending more time together as a couple, doing an activity that we both enjoy would make sense. So you could chunk up to that, solve the problem by chunking back down to something you both agree on.
That's wonderfully specific. That's great. And even things like negotiation. Say it's management and unions, corporation and unions, and they're both because they're at the bottom. We want this, we want this, we want this. Okay, but what is the end result that would work best? Well, we want everybody to get what they want and still get along. Okay, so what would that look like? And we start finding the common ground that people are willing to work for. And another one of these is this one I find very interesting. If you have, you need detailed instructions. So if you have a team that's going to work on a project, so say we redid Mike Mandel Hypnosis, and you and I shot all the videos again, and all of this. Now we just said, okay, we're going to redo everything. Okay, go. What? We have to chunk down to find out what has to be done in the smaller pieces. And then we assign those to people.
Yeah.
Assigning to a team each step they have to do. And that's a great example of starting with a concept and then giving specific instructions.
Right.
I had another point here, and it was quite interesting. I just can't remember where the heck it was.
Well, I don't know.
Oh, I know what it was. I know what it was. It was teaching a subject. And I'm a pretty good teacher. You are too. Actually, we're both excellent teachers. And one of the things that makes it useful is we know to start with the big chunk. So someone comes to Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy to learn from Chris and I, or we're doing the Toronto 5-day intensive, whatever. We don't say, okay, we're going to teach you how to do this paralyzing your hand thing first. And people are like, well, why?
Explain the outcome.
Yeah.
What's going to happen at the end of 5 days?
That's
Where are you going to be? Right.
Yeah, the big chunk first and then chunk down.
So it applies
to anything.
Yeah, it applies to so much. I mean, I know I opened the video by saying this is going to apply to problem solving and organizing information in a logical way that'll allow you to solve problems, but it doesn't have to solve problems. It can actually just be used for teaching. So that's great too.
And that's pretty well it.
Chunking up and chunking down.
Chunking up the concept down to detail.
Let's summarize. So chunking up is like zooming out on Google Earth. And eventually, you're just floating in space, and all is one.
Right. And chunking down is like zooming in on your neighbor's backyard behind all the fences and walls and seeing that he stole your garden gnome.
That's right. All right. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you check out MikeMandelHypnosis.com for more stuff like this. You'll want to check out the Brain Software Syndicate, which is awesome. It's our community and all these weekly videos and all of our best personal development courses in one spot. See you there.
And good night.